the man of the day. Can't thank him enough for joining us. He must be about as busy a guy there is right now in the TSN family. It's our pal Nails himself, Dave Naylor. Dave, we'll get a second. First off, it's great to talk to you again, and thanks so much for joining us back here in the Peg.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Hustler. Very happy for your new venture and great to be on the show. It was obviously been following all the events of that have gone on in the last little while with your health and your career, and here you are, right back in the saddle, man. So congratulations.
Well, I appreciate it. I couldn't have done it without the incredible support of the people here in Winnipeg. The response is just, frankly, blown Remus and I away,
Awesome.
and we're thankful for it. And it gives us the opportunity to do things like this, talking to you about breaking news with, a report that has. It's earth-shattering in a lot of ways, because I think when you think about what this could mean, not necessarily will mean, almost everything is on the table. Tell us about finding out about this and what we know about the formal talks between the CFL and the XFL.
Well, the first thing I got to do is dig through my emails from a month ago, because somebody sent me a "Have you heard this?" kind of anonymous tip on this from somebody, and I couldn't get anything on it, and I don't know who it was that sent it to me, but I need to send. And I don't know whether they knew anything or were just asking. But in terms of learning about it, very recently there was some buzz going on in the CFL. Somebody reached out to me and said, "I hear there's an announcement coming," and we knew that it was not very well understood at the football operations level, like GMs, coaches, assistant GMs, that kind of thing. And whenever those kinds of announcements come out, they're usually related to a bigger picture business direction. And so but I didn't know this was coming until this morning. And I'm not shocked, I got to say. I have always wondered whether the Canadian Football League needed an equity partner to make this work. The XFL has obviously been tossed out, hadn't done much legwork other than, a few inquiries on this kind of thing. So, but I agree with you. Like, I don't think we can get ahead of ourselves on this one, but we're going to speculate. Like, we have to. And just to be clear here, Hustler, this is not the two leagues deciding to talk. This is the two leagues deciding to formalize talks. They've been talking for months. So it's not like, hey, we don't know these guys and we're just telling everybody we're going to go over for coffee and break bread and see what sticks to the wall. No. They've done that. This is formal talks. And formal talks is like where you put the sandwich together, I believe.
Now, what's in it for the CFL and what would be in it for the XFL? What are the two sides? What do they see in each other that might make some sort of partnership, however that works, mutually beneficial?
I think in the CFL, the league sees credibility. It sees history. It sees tradition. It sees stability, in terms of football. And it sees also some of the outreach that Randy Ambrosi has done through CFL 2.0, having the other federations and trying to turn this into more of a global game. The CFL, I think, sees tapping into U.S. television money, tapping into the capitalization of Redbird, which is the company that's behind Dwayne Johnson in this venture, looking at the CFL wanting to make this a global game, as we know. What are the two businesses Dwayne Johnson's been in? Wrestling and motion pictures. Those are global businesses. So the companies that he has behind him that have made him successful in those, reach everywhere. And I think they both know that the XFL, an 8-team league, the CFL, a 9-team league, one of the biggest things we hear, 9 teams, right? Playing all the same teams. So you could put it together, have a bigger league. I think the synergies are relatively obvious on the surface. Now, whether they turn into anything is and there's certainly, we're going to get to some questions, I'm sure, very quickly about, what anything that looks like a merger of these two would look like, because there's a couple of, rather obvious obstacles to that right now.
Yes. The rules, of course, are one of them. And, I think it was Rod or Darren. I was tuning into Rod Paterson's show earlier because I knew those guys would be all over it. They kind of were going on the air just as this sort of dropped.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it might have been Darren joking around that, you could have, the CFL play and then the XFL play, and you'd have the championship game. And like in baseball with the DH rule, just figure out where the game is played and played with that size field. I doubt that would be the case. But there's a lot of people, there's a big pushback. Oh, this is going to be the loss of Canadian football. If they don't go to, if they move from 3 downs, if they go to a standard U.S. sized field that changes the Canadianity, if that's a word, of the CFL. Just thought the fact that that's even being discussed, I think, speaks to the incredibly desperate business environment that the league is in right now, and all the teams are trying to at least be there on the other side when this is over.
Look, I like 3-down football. Okay, I love 3-down football. I love having one league that plays 4 down and one that has 3. Okay, but a couple of things have occurred to me about over the last several years. One is the difference between 3-down football and 4-down football is smaller today than it's ever been. I mean, if we were having this conversation in 1983, I mean, NFL running backs are getting 36 carries a game. The passing is a secondary part of the game. The rules are not, adjusted for that. The NFL game today looks more like the CFL than we've ever seen. So, we aren't talking about one league that's 3 yards in a cloud of dust and the other one that's wide open. The second thing is, one of the things that happened this year when the CFL wasn't playing is the league ran a lot of these Zoom calls with Canadians that are playing NCAA football. Not just the biggest names, but guys you might not know of, but they're at decent schools or mid-majors or whatever. And I started going on these calls and asking them about growing up watching football. None of these guys watched the CFL. like not one. I shouldn't say that blankly, but most of them do not identify with 3-down football. And it made me thinking that if we're really trying in this forever quest to reach the next generation of fans, are we using the wrong game? Because kids learn the NFL at 6, 7 years old, and then somebody shows them the CFL, and the fact that it's a different game is not appealing to them. The 65-year-old fan loves that, but I'm not sure the 12-year-old fan does. So those are a couple of things that I've thought about. Again, all that said, I would rather have 3-down football. But part of the conversation here, and we will never know the extent of economic, crisis the CFL is under. But at what price are you protecting your rules? Are you protecting your rules to have a 6-team league if 3 teams aren't going to play next year? Like, you have to be able to sell some vision to the owners of this league that shows that it's sustainable. And I'm not sure that if you came back at the end of this year and said, guys, we're just going to cut, and we're going to have a smaller league, and we're going to play 3-down football, and we're not going to be able to pay people what we used to, but we're going to protect our rules. Is that better than trying to find a business model that works and adapting your rules? And some things you could keep, right? The motion you could keep. The yard off the ball you could keep. Bigger end zones you could keep. Could you keep the bigger field? Might be tough in some of the U.S. stadiums. It's not designed for that. And obviously, you're going to have to make a choice between 3 and 4 downs. But look, I'm a traditionalist on the 3-down game. I love it. If you could incorporate some elements of Canadian football into the game, but it was 4 downs, I could live with it.
Dave Naylor with us from TSN, who broke the news today on the formal discussions between the CFL and the XFL going forward. Dave, I don't know about you. I know a lot of people in our chat here, people that I've been talking around, we're wanting to get vaccines. We want to get back out. We want to get back to normal. And one of the biggest parts of that here in Winnipeg is getting back to IG Field, raising that damn banner that we waited so long for, and having a great time seeing the Bombers take the field again. What can you tell us about the 2021 CFL season? And do we take anything from what we've learned today as to what that might mean for 2021 here north of the border?
I wondered about that this morning. I did a hit with Rod Smith where I said, I don't know. Like, if you came up with an announcement in 6 weeks that says we're launching a new league in April of 2022, why would the owners of this league want to play one more CFL season that's going to lose a ton of money? Or do you just pour all your resources and focus on 2022 and the new venture? I think from what I've seen comments from Bob Young, whose team, of course, is the host of the Grey Cup this year. I've seen comments from Commissioner Randy Ambrosie, both of them steadfast that the league's focus remains on 2021. John Hufnagel came out and said the same thing. So I think there is going to be a 2021 season. It might be a kind of weird 21 season if they announce about the 1st of July that they're merging with the XFL in 2022. I guess it might be like one last go round here on the 19 3-down league. I don't know. But I don't believe that I'm certainly everything based on the comments I've seen today, I don't believe that this venture, jeopardizes the 2021 season. That these things are on parallel tracks. But it is an unusual dynamic because we've now really got two tracks to follow. Where are the conversations with the CFL and the XFL, and where are they going to arrive at? And, when are we going to start the 2021 season? But this absolutely affects everybody's thinking about the future, obviously.
Dave, another huge part of Canadian football and the identity of the CFL is Canadian players. And I realize this is so early, and I'm basically asking you to speculate here, but the future of Canadian players in the CFL, a ratio rule, do you have any sense as to whether that would be maintained even on CFL teams? And of course, we saw before when the league went into the States, it was an unbalanced playing field. We all remember that Baltimore Stallions team, but just thoughts on the Canadian players' future in the CFL based on this announcement.
I cannot imagine a fully integrated league where there are 20 Canadians on every team and 7 starters mandated. I know the league survived that for a couple of years in the last era. Of course, that was Canadian rules, which gave the Canadian players an advantage. Also, the fact that every U.S. team hired a former NFL or former USFL coach, except Baltimore, gave them an advantage. So they had an advantage on the sidelines, and they had the advantage in the strategy of the game. I think that was going to become an issue very quickly had the U.S. expansion teams not folded at the end of the 95 season. And frankly, the economics improve for the owners if you don't have a ratio. That Canadian offensive lineman that you pay $225,000 to, you can replace for $75,000 with an American. That's because of the laws of economics, supply and demand. Canadian players cost you more. So if you're looking to adjust your economics to be viable in a post-COVID universe, it's a lot easier to field a team with mostly Americans than it is with a ratio, just from an economic standpoint. And look, I think that you could have a developmental element. You may have some spots on the roster for Canadians, but I couldn't see the full thing. And again, I'll just throw a bit of a counterintuitive thing, okay? The CFL ratio comes from an era before you and I were born, when Canadians could not realistically compete with Americans in football. If you did not have a ratio, you were not going to have Canadians on the field. Now, they still dwarf us in terms of numbers. But let's just talk about what's happening on the other side of the border right now. There's Canadians in the NFL. There's Canadians in college football. I mean, there's an SEC football game between Tennessee and Alabama this year that had 2 starting receivers, not just from Canada, from the same town. From the Brampton Minor Football Association, like an SEC showdown. So if Canadians can compete on that side of the border, why can't they compete on this side of the border? Well, the answer is they can. And I guess the question would be, in what numbers can they? Can they 20 per team? No. Can they in smaller numbers? I think legitimately so. I think to some degree, you could argue the ratio is a bit outdated in that sense. But I know there are people that love to see, Canadians on the field, and it's a very important game, and they feel like it's important for the development of the sport. Look, if you like seeing Canadians on the field, I can't tell you that's not important to you, right? That's important to you. But here's the argument we're going to hear, okay, Hustler? If you get rid of the ratio, grassroots football in this country will die. Kids will stop playing it because they have nothing to dream for. Okay. Let's destroy that myth right now. Ready? Where's the ratio in the NBA and the NCAA basketball? Doesn't exist. Not one. Where is it in baseball? Not one. Where is it in NCAA football? Where all these leagues where it doesn't exist, Canadians are aspiring to get to. And I'll go back to what I said earlier about all these Canadians in the NCAA. None of them. No, I've never ever heard an elite Canadian football player tell me he started playing the game because he knew there was a ratio in the CFL and he could get on one of those ratio spots. I have never heard that. Like, maybe there are guys, but when I'm talking to, whether it's Chuba Hubbard or a Joe or Josh Palmer or Eamon Ogbamiga, and I just named off like 4 of the most elite guys in college football right now, some of them are upcoming to the NFL draft. None of those guys will tell you that the CFL and its ratio had anything to do with their football dreams. Now, if they don't make it in the NFL or college football, they'll gladly wrap their arms around the flag in the 3-down game and do like other players have done. But heck, I've known guys who've won most outstanding Canadian in this league who told me they never watched 3-down football until they played in the league.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's true, and it speaks to kind of the ups and downs of the CFL over the course of the last 30 years. I mean, even in my lifetime as a football fan, there's been some times where it seems like the CFL has had momentum, and then there's been other drastic times where it seems like they've been in real dire straits. Dave, I know how busy you are today. We can't thank you enough for coming on with us. Just one final question on the way out. I know you're going to be digging on this 24/7 for the foreseeable future. But what is next? What do we expect to hear? Will there be some sort of an announcement? Is there a time frame on maybe updating people? Do you know anything about just the process?
I was my colleague at TSN, Rod Smith, did an interview with the commissioner of the league about an hour ago. And when I was sending him questions to ask him, one of those I sent was, what do they envision for a timeline for these talks? Are we talking weeks, months, years? Like, what is it? I would imagine, because I think the XFL wants to play in 2022. By the way, the most tangible thing that's come out today is the XFL hitting pause on its 2022 season. Like, that tells you this is serious, okay? And so they've basically told all their partners, we've hit the pause button, because we may not be coming back to you with 8 teams. We may be coming back to you with more than 8 teams, I think, is what they're saying. So I guess it's really what's next is we wait to see what emerges from these talks. We wait for a news conference in July where the leagues announce that they're going to play separate leagues but have interlocking games, or there's a merger. I don't know, but that's what I think is next.
Dave, great to catch up with you anytime, but especially today. We really appreciate you jumping on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with us, and look forward to catching up with you very soon with more information on what really will boil down to the future of the Canadian Football League. It was great to catch up. Thanks so much for the time.
My pleasure, Hustler. Thanks for having me on. Congratulations on the show.
Hey, appreciate it, Dave. Appreciate it. There he is, our pal Nails, coming through today for the boys in the Peg.